Hi, this is Steve Gordon coming to you live with Olympia Madness on behalf of Future 42. There's enough going on down in Olympia that's wild and crazy. We wanted to put together a bracket so that you, our fans, can vote on the craziest bills coming out of Olympia this year. I'm joined with a couple of my guests here today that are all part of the team. So we'll go around the room here to my right. Go ahead. Man that needs no introduction.
Brian Haywood started Let's Go Washington and fighting some of these bills. We filed them with initiatives, and they're trying to kill them. And, you know, Steve, we've got 16, but we easily could have done 128. There's so many terrible bills coming this year. Dan, I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Yeah, this is Washington's Not So Sweet 16. I'm Dan Mead-Smith, and I'm the co-founder and co-leader of Project 42.
My name's Andy Stevens. I run a lot of social media for Future 42. I also run an activist group.
So we're going to go through all these. You'll get a chance to vote on our social media platforms, both on X and Instagram, future42.org. And you'll get to vote. It'll be open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we're going to give you a little brief background on some of these bills, kind of go through and make fun of some of the folks that originated them because they deserve it, and talk a little bit about just the general mood down in Olympia. So
a lot of this stuff happens in darkness usually, though, right? And so one of the things that we're trying to do is highlight just the crazy that goes on in Olympia after you go to bed.
Yeah, for those of us that have been down in Olympia this session, getting to see it up close and personal is actually a lot more scary because
That's right.
It's not a well-orchestrated process. It's much more haphazard than I think most people realize that aren't in the blood, guts, and feathers of it all. So I think, Dan, have you been down there this session at all to testify?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been down there meeting with legislators, testifying, mostly opposing, unfortunately, this session.
We've been playing a lot of defense.
Yes.
It's get out your goalie gear and protect at all costs. So we've had a lot of folks, and a lot of folks in our Future 42 audience that have been helping us by contacting your legislators, weighing in on a lot of bills that you agree would be harmful for our state. So let's go through the brackets. We've got 4 regions. We're going to start out with the More Taxes for Everybody region. So some of you may have heard that we've got somewhere between an $18 billion and $6 billion deficit or shortfall this year, or in the next 4 years. And the folks down in Olympia are trying to find a way to balance that. And one of the solutions being proposed by the Democratic majority is that we all get to pay for more taxes based on their inability to control spending. So let's walk through some of the bright ideas coming out of the legislature so far. One of them is a vehicle mileage tax. That was proposed by Jake Fye out of Legislative District 27 in the Tacoma area. And that's going to charge you per mile for the privilege of driving. Now, it's interesting, this bill, they make it a optional bill for folks that have an electric vehicle. And for a couple years, it's an option. But then what they kind of put in the fine print that they don't publicize is that in the out years, it becomes mandatory. The other thing they do with this is that the new money that comes in, instead of going to highways, will go to highway systems, which encompasses everything they want to put money into in terms of transit and bike lanes and a whole bunch of things that have nothing to do with our highway system. So I don't know about you guys. How do you feel about the highway system and how we're doing in this state today? We don't need more money for that, right?
Well, it's not just the money; it's the monitoring that they're eventually going to have to do. This is, I think, a brutal regime coming. Right? Not, in fact, Jake, he's a 12-year veteran, so this guy knows what he's doing when it comes to being sneaky with the taxes. One of his quotes is that we can't keep building highways. Mass transit and bike lanes are the only sustainable way forward. So he wants everybody on a bus or a bike, and he's going to get rid of all the cars. I mean, that's where, honestly, where they're trying to take this. They're talking about revenue, but I think at the back of it, there's maybe something even more nefarious, which is getting us all out of our cars.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get from Omak to Wenatchee, a bike would seem like the logical choice.
The bike lane over the mountains that's something I've been hoping we need. We need bike lanes on those mountain passes.
And that quote's worrisome from any legislator, but he's the chair of the Transportation Committee.
That's right.
So he's the guy who's planning out our highway system, and supposed to be trying to reduce congestion as we're trying to get to work. And
It will.
focus is
He's
bike
going to
lanes.
reduce. He's going to reduce it. We're going to have no cars, just bikes and buses.
Yeah, I'm sure the people in OMAC want to pay for a high-speed rail project that'll last 30 years and never get built.
Yeah, well, it's another way they try to work around the 18th Amendment that dedicates fuel tax revenue to our highway system.
Yeah.
So with CCA or with this, they're able to report that money to other pet green projects, some of which are, I guess justified, but not at the expense of our highway system that's already in pretty bad disrepair.
Yeah, right now, I mean, when you fill up your car, you pay the gas tax. And that's what Steve was saying. The 18th Amendment protects the gas tax, but this is going to be on top of the gas tax, or maybe one day replace it, and that protection is going to go away. It's no longer to be just for roads.
And it's super expensive to collect it. It's like 8 to 12% of the tax gets eaten up trying to build out the infrastructure to collect it. And like you say, we all then get to put a monitor in our car that tells them exactly where we go and how many miles. And guess what? The people from out of state aren't going to have that monitor, so they won't have to pay to use our highway system. So lots of bad things on this one, but we still have 15 more to get through, so we better keep.
Well, that's why it's the
moving.
number one seed, though.
Yeah,
right?
that's
In
why
this
it is the
district,
number one seed.
Such a good one.
Not a lot of popular sentiment. I think
It's got
we
a
had
good
20,000 people sign in opposed to this, if I remember
it was
correctly.
It was like a 98% opposition rate.
Yeah.
All right, unemployment for striking workers, something only our folks in Olympia could come up with. The sheer genius of this is amazing.
So extreme that Newsom vetoed it in California.
Yeah.
This is our only legislator from the east of the mountains. All the other 15 bills in our brackets are from Western Washington, not surprisingly, but Marcus is from Spokane. Not playing as well as Gonzaga in the bracket, because he's got one of the worst bills in our not so sweet 16. But yeah, this bill's been around for a couple of years. Hasn't gone anywhere, but this year it's actually passed out of one of the chambers, so it's something to watch, right?
Yeah, and it has a hearing coming up next week.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's interesting, I was actually at the Senate when this was being debated in the Senate, and the defense points from the other side, in support of doing this bill, the Democrats in the legislature said, well, one of the great things is this really won't have that big of an impact because in Washington state, we don't have that many strikes. Well, we also don't pay people to go on strike. So I think that's going to be something.
Small cause and effect thing there about to happen.
Completely.
Just expect schools to start in October every year.
Yeah.
If this
Exactly.
passes.
All right, so that's the first round matchup of number 1 versus number 4 in the tax bracket. Let's move on to our number 2 seed in the tax bracket, property tax increases.
This one's popular.
Super popular. Everybody feels like they're undercharged on their property taxes.
It easily could have been the first seed, right?
It was quite a battle behind the scenes to decide who was going to come out of this one with the number 1 seed.
The basic gist of this is that right now there's a 1% increase allowed, and even that's sort of not honest though, right? Because property values as they go up, if you have lots of restrictions, so there's no new housing, shortage of housing supply, and lots of restrictions, so it's expensive to do it. Prices and values both go up, so you're already getting hit with that. And then on top of that, you've got the rate increase. And they're talking here about allowing the rate increase to be 3% instead of 1%. So a tripling of the rate. And over 10, 15, 30 years when you own a home, I mean, at some point you're going to be, well, you're basically paying for your house 2 or 3 times, right? You pay it off, and then you use your property tax to pay it off again. And this is a great way to hurt seniors and people with new home buyers. That's just it's really crushing.
Yeah.
This one's also going to really hit people that own land here in Western Washington, because those values are going through the roof.
Yeah. You think you retire, you're on a fixed income, your house is paid off, you think you have your expenses controlled, and then now your property taxes start skyrocketing.
Yeah,
and that's what's going to force you out of your home when you're a senior.
It is a wealth tax already. I mean, they're joking about a wealth tax on the very wealthy. They're not joking. They're suggesting it. But this is already a wealth tax on everybody that is stupid enough to buy a home in Washington State. And this would just be crushing.
Yeah. The other thing you said it's not honest. The second thing that's not honest about this is that local governments can raise property taxes whatever percentage they want. it's the 1% is they can't do it without a vote, a public vote. So now, they're afraid to put this to a vote to the public, but they want to go above 1%, and now they can go 3% without a public vote. So all of this is it's about transparency. They're trying to hide when they're increasing your property taxes.
Shady. This should be the midnight bracket in a way of what's going on with these guys.
There's one more thing about this is King County Executive Dow Constantine is threatening to defund the King County prosecutor, the King County deputy's office, if they don't pass this bill.
Yeah, well,
Political blackmail.
It is
you learned that one right out of the
blackmail.
Obama playbook. Take away all the things that people care about when you want to shut down the government or get a tax increase.
I'm sure he'll keep his deputies unless he is the CEO. Sound transit.
I mean, it's so duplicitous because, one of the things that a lot of people are worried about is affordability, and this directly strikes at the heart of affordability for your average citizen here in Washington.
Yep.
Well, and it has a spillover effect because there's a rent control bill that's working its way through. And I was just at a meeting here in Kirkland with several reps from our area from the 45th, and it was sort of people that were in support of, it's sort of a left-leaning district. The only opposition that was really loud were people that owned apartment buildings, and they were complaining that property taxes were something that they had no control over, and they go up so fast. That they can't keep up with it, and yet you're going to control how much I can charge for rent. So this has implications all over. If this goes up, it hits the rent control and really kills not just homeowners, but also rental property owners.
You'd almost think Brian got a sneak peek at the brackets talking about the rent control issues. That might be a feature.
It may or may not show
coming
up.
attractions. Yes. All right. Let's move on to the can deposit tax. So. This one,
it is really any beverage container.
Any beverage container. We decided that Oregon's doing so great with this that we'd copy their program. And again, I mean, the free market hasn't figured this out and been able to make it work because we don't have enough low-cost outlets for the things that we want to recycle and ways to recycle it. So we're just going to impose a tax on everybody and make that work. We've already got all the supply chain set up. We've chased away the manufacturing base that can actually turn recycled product into usable product. A big glass plant that our family hauled out of for 35 years in Seattle recently had to close because they couldn't keep up with all the environmental regs that they were imposed on them. So
isn't that the irony, right? We say, hey, we want to do this, but then we're going to, the thing that's supposed to fix whatever problem, we got too many bottles and cans and let's fix that. But the thing that could fix it, we've regulated out of existence. I mean, that's like the quintessential Washington thing to do.
Well, it's like there's no world that exists outside the borders of Washington state, right? And so, you wouldn't want to copy something that's actually worked somewhere. We only copy the bad ideas from elsewhere. So this is a bad idea. That's just another tax, just like they imposed with the bag tax a few years ago that just increases taxes on the least able to afford it in our communities.
There's a reason why only a handful of states out of 50 have this sort of a can deposit tax. So why are we implementing something that's on its way out? This is the 1970s type proposal.
Well, and in fact, they actually reference when in the intent of this bill, it talks about how they have improved recycling by 84% in places where this has been imposed. That was a study from 1979 in the state of Michigan. So some things have maybe changed since 1979. Call me crazy. 10 cents would buy a lot more in 1979 than it'll buy today.
One of the other things, so I think before we go on, just talk about Monica a little bit.
Sure.
She's a bit of an all-star. I mean, I think she's
she looks
one.
Like it.
She really does.
She's clearly right. If you watch her on the floor live, she's sort of single-handedly took on the Republicans on several bills, and she's got a couple of entries in the brackets this year.
She's a multiple entry originator of legislation that's bad for our state, and she's really punching above her weight. Mm-hmm.
She's been in the legislature for 8 years, doing a lot of damage. She's an instructional coach at Evergreen School. I don't know what that means. Anybody know what that means? She used to be a middle school teacher, but now she's an instructional coach, which makes her an expert on...
I think that's the way for the teachers. You need to keep you on the payroll while you're in Olympia as a legislator.
It might be.
For the rest of the year.
I thought maybe it was like teaching people how to keep secrets from parents, but...
it's another one of the 80% of non-teaching jobs that have 80% have gone up over the last 5
eating up the salaries.
Years.
She's the House Majority Floor Leader, and so she's got quite a bit of power within the caucus. And so you expect big things from her, right? I mean, it's in some ways it's not surprising that she's got two that are swinging, but I think she's a good contender for
MVP of the tournament potentially.
Yeah,
she definitely
very,
somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah,
one of her teams could make it through.
She sponsors the one that I think is going to win.
Again,
more
quick,
leakage. More leakage.
skipping ahead.
Bracket.
All right.
All right. So we're going to move on to the next region, the Trust Us, This is Good for You region. So this is stuff that only the legislature thinks good, but they're going to impose it on you anyway.
And Washington specializes in trust us. We think this is good for
Yeah,
you, right?
A long history of
yes.
failure on this in this category. So, do we have anybody who might want to talk about the initiative killer in this?
Andy's all over this one.
Yeah.
This was an interesting one. When they presented it, they sort of tried to make it sound like it was innocuous. Oh, we just want to clean things up, and we're really worried that there might be fraud in the system, and everyone else is doing this, and so it's a natural thing to do it. What they did in this bill was create. It sounds innocuous. On the back of initiative page, if you've ever done that, you have 20 signatures on the front, and on the back, somebody had to sign, take responsibility for it. And if they didn't sign it, the other 20 signatures, first of all, didn't count. Second of all, they put a penalty of, I forgot, it's sort of like perjury. If you signed it and didn't check, one, that the addresses were correct, and number two, that the people had read the initiative. Those were requirements for the person signing the back. And so if you're a volunteer, it was impractical on a lot of reasons, right? If you're in a room with 1,000 people and there's 30 clipboards in the back, who's responsible for checking that? So on that level, it's impractical. And then something else is quite interesting. We don't require, can you imagine if the state said, well, you can't vote unless you've actually read the ballot pamphlet, right? Well, then we'd have much better informed voting, but we don't do that. So we're saying just to get one on the ballot, you've got to have read and certify that you've read, and someone certify that you certified that you read. And it just really was ridiculous. We had a lot of people. This one actually, I think, everything's a zombie and it could come back to life in Olympia. This one, I don't think is going to make it through in real life, but it certainly is a top seed for just stupid, deadly ideas that are coming out of Olympia. And I think this one's got a pretty decent shot within its category of this is good for you. This was the Olympia saying, no, leave the lawmaking to us, little children. You don't get to do it, right?
But this is a good example of how Let's Go Washington and all the people that signed the 6 initiative last year have weighed in, right? I mean, this is public pressure why this bill's not moving.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why.
I think Secretaries Hobb and Reed going down in person testifying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it also helps that in the 26th, there's a new senator, Krishna Dasan, who, this is a little bit of inside basketball, but Krishna Dasan was appointed by Inslee to fill a vacancy, and so she's up for election this year.
Yep.
And it's a district that's somewhat purplish, maybe a swing district, being contested by Caldier in that district. And so I think she's got to be careful because she was originally, when it went out of committee, she was the deciding vote that sent it out of committee, and then it went back in and nested. so and maybe that's just a coincidence, but I certainly think there was some influence there.
Well, and I think, this is a good example where just shining a light on it makes a difference, because had it gone through its normal process in Olympia where nobody's really paying attention, they could have snuck this one through.
Yep.
But it got a lot of press. You were out there banging the drum. We were hitting it hard with Future 42. A lot of other people were, because it's really the only way to push back against the near supermajorities in the legislature.
That's right.
So making some noise on this, they kind of had to listen and say, ooh, this is a bad idea. And I do think Steve Hobbs testifying was another big deal, because Hobbs really spoke out against this and said, this is a bad idea, you guys. We don't have the funding or the wherewithal to carry this out.
Senator Valdez has been in the legislature for almost 8 years now, 7 years and 9 months, which is 7 years, 9 months too long. But he's a long-term employee of City of Seattle. He's a Seattle, the 46th is sort of north and northeast Seattle, right?
So he's learned his craft at the feet of experts.
At the pros. Dark arts, he's a full Voldemort acolyte, right? That I don't think he's at the level of Voldemort, but he certainly learned the dark arts there. Maybe it's Snape that he learned it from. I don't know, but he learned it in the Hogwarts of Seattle, right?
Wow, extra bonus points for that reference, Brian. All right, on that note, we're going to move along here to the matchup against it, seed number 4, the rideshare price limit. So, as I'm sure many people are aware, the World Cup's coming to town. And so Emily Alvarado, the 34th, is very concerned that people aren't going to be able to get around cost effectively during the World Cup. This was specifically proposed because of that. And so they're going to put a price cap on ride sharing in Seattle and elsewhere during peak times. Obviously, never taken an economics course, because when you put price caps in place, it leads to shortages, which means that, people that have to drive farther into Seattle that maybe would have provided service won't get off the couch and do it now. People that look out their window and see it's a lousy day and it's raining and the traffic's already bad, they're like, I'll maybe stay here and watch things from my couch rather than go to work and give somebody a ride on my Uber or Lyft or whatever. So, a really bad idea, the opposite impact of what is intended. And I think Alvarado has 2 entries as well. So, and she's relatively new, Brian. I think if this
she's
is
a
only her
2-year
second
freshman.
term.
Yeah, she's a 2-year freshman.
She's from West Seattle.
So kind of shooting above her weight class.
Yeah.
She's kind of the Caitlin Clark of the
tournament. Really coming on strong
Yeah.
early in her career and making some noise, not in a good way, but making noise nonetheless.
And let's pass a state law for an event that lasts about 30 days. Yeah, it's going to be a big event, but let's pass a state law for everybody in the state forever for a 30-day event.
Yeah,
and
make sure that all the visitors that come to town have a miserable experience getting around because we're already transportation challenged.
If this one passes, you're going to see 100-person long lines for Uber.
Yeah, we'll be seeing that on the national news. And one of the greatest own goals ever, Seattle limits rideshare for the biggest event of the year.
Yeah, the hypocrisy, the things that sort of don't make logical sense because they're at crossways with some of the other policies, right? I mean, if you want people to ride share more, which I suspect they do, right? I mean, that's a good thing.
This is the not logical sense bracket.
Yeah.
Well,
just trust us. It's good for you.
Yes. Weren't they just fighting for minimum wage for these drivers? What are they doing?
Yeah. We want minimum wage to be $70 an hour, and we want you to, but you can't charge more than $7 an hour to use the car.
All right. So that one's kind of a sleeper. I don't think it's got a chance against the number 1 seed. That's almost the number 1 overall seed, I think. So it's going to be a tough matchup. But
she's West Seattle, Burien, Vashon Island. So again, we're getting some of the real.
That's where a lot of fantastic ideas have come from.
And she started her career out at Planned Parenthood. So that led to greater things. She worked for the city of Seattle's Office of Housing Equity.
So we have 2 City of Seattle employees up against each other.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That makes it even more. It's like this is
based on the thriving success of Seattle.
This is Snape versus McGonagall right here.
Give them a promotion to Olympia because things are so fantastic in Seattle.
So that's where you want to learn from. Is Seattle.
Same theme of initiatives. We got the parental rights, right? Number 2.
Yeah. So number 2 seed in this one is the parental notification repeal. And once again, I'm going to leave this one to Mr. Haywood, who's done a ton of work on this to explain. Oh, look at that. And look who's back.
Trying to guard.
Our favorite rep from the 49th.
Here's Monica again. Like I said, I think she's really MVP. She's really got a shot at MVP, first of all.
She's going places.
And there's an interesting battle that's going on right now. There were 40-something amendments put to this bill, right? There's actually 2 bills. If we go back a little bit, there's a bill in the Senate, and it came over to the House, and the House said, no, we're not going to look at the Senate bill. We're going to do our own bill, 1296, and pulled it out of committee so they could run it again. There were about 40-plus amendments, and they were amendments like things like a child under 18 cannot excuse themselves from school.
9 years old.
And there are cases of that, right? And really, in some ways, for them, it's the ideas about abortion and about gender transitioning. That's the big fight but they won't say it. If you listen to them in debate, they don't mention that. It's mental health and it's.
Jamie Peterson kind of did.
He did
mention it,
but even then, he used words like he used the mental health of a child. If a woman is old enough to get pregnant, she's old enough to make her own decisions. Well, which decisions would that be, right?
Yeah.
And so they're basically saying 13 or younger should be able to make these decisions. We tried just not to change the decision-making process, but just to give the parents notification that things are happening. And one of the things that I had suggested before was that, if your child is going to school and you're an atheist and they're doing a secret Christian Bible study class, you don't want that. I mean, you have a right to know as a parent.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever the ideological thing is here, you have a right to know as a parent. And it seems, if you listen to every single amendment and all the no's coming from the Democrats, this is a hill that they want to die on. We think, not only are we willing to keep secrets from parents, we think it's imperative that we keep parents in the dark on what's happening to their kids at school.
Did you see some of the amendments on 1296?
I did. I was watching them.
No boys and girls showers voted down. The no boys and girls restrooms, obviously they're going to vote that down. It's just insane.
They got smart. Like, there was an amendment originally in the House that said, if your child is raped by a school employee, you have to notify the parents right away, right? Yeah. And the law right now is like 48 hours. And so the 2081 changed that, and they voted that initiative down originally. But when it came back this time in the House, magically it was 93. They got so much blowback that it was 93-0 supporting that initiative, or supporting that.
I think that's an important point for people watching today. So just give a quick recap of what happened just 12 months ago on this exact same bill, right?
Yes,
on 2081.
Well, and 2081 initially was an initiative to the legislature with 450,000 people that signed it. We sent it to the legislature, and interestingly, it was 82-15 in the House and 49-0 in the Senate. They passed this bill. This is their bill, and now
with pretty much the same people,
exactly the same, right? They passed it. They could have rejected it. They could have sent it to the voters. They didn't. They passed it. And they're saying, well, this bill, it's confusing. It doesn't do this. Brian Haywood tried to pass this law. No, I didn't. You guys voted for it, Jamie Peterson, right? Monica?
Brian, why do you suppose they passed it?
I think they expected that judge in King County to declare parts of it unconstitutional when they...
Mostly they wanted to keep it off the ballot is what they wanted to do. They took the three most popular ones and took them off the ballot. And then they knew they could come back and wipe them out a year later.
But Andy brings up a good point on this, the judge. Yeah. They challenged, the ACLU challenged this bill, and they were all saying, well, it's not constitutional. A King County, not a Republican, I promise you, King County judge ruled that this 2081 was completely constitutional and in line with our school regs. And that's the lie that they're telling, is that, it doesn't jive with state and federal law. And that's patently not true. So I think this one's got a good shot. It's a number 2 seed. But I think Monica's, not only is she going to be VP, but she could go all the way.
Yeah, I think this one's going all the way.
Yeah, no,
this is the only one, I think, of the 16 that's passed both houses already. Is that
yeah, but
right?
yes, it has passed both houses in different versions.
Right.
It's now going back to the Senate, and they've scheduled a vote, I think, for the 20th. So
there's public hearing.
Public hearing, sorry, not a
hearing.
vote.
Yeah,
public hearing.
But they're probably going to send it on to Governor Bob. And we'll see what he does.
There's intrigue on this one because Senator Peterson took a lot of flack for saying the quiet part out loud, right? He said what he believed, and kudos to him for being honest there, right? But he said the quiet part out loud, and that's parents don't have a right to know or be notified in advance or make a decision or change the decision and really not be involved in this. And he took so much heat. I'm told that he sort of sent it over to the House and said, don't send it back. They've now sent it back, and they've scheduled something on it. But we'll see where that goes, because I don't believe the House and the Senate are in alignment with this necessarily.
Well, the probably the most ironic thing of that is everything he said was true, right?
Right.
By state law.
Right.
And he said it in such a dismissive way that the rest of the country was appalled. And he had no idea that the rest of the country would be appalled by our policies that have been in place for a long time here. They don't believe what we've imposed on ourselves in this state.
Yeah.
The only thing he said that was wrong is the notification piece,
Yeah.
because 2081 is the law of the land now.
Yeah.
And they can pretend like it's not, but it is. And they have an obligation to notify, right?
This one pissed off people that I know that don't pay attention to state politics.
Yeah.
There's echoes of Virginia, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Well, and the last thing before we get off of this, just because I've noticed this, and I'm sure you guys have too down there, that really our legislature is horribly transphobic, that they have men's and women's restrooms down there in the chambers. And I think it's time for them. I think it's time for them to have gender neutral bathrooms available for all legislators.
In the chambers, yeah.
Yeah.
It smells like a lawsuit.
Yeah. I mean, why aren't they subject to state law there? So I maybe suggested a few folks that could propose that.
Not only do they have, before you go on, not only do they have separate bathrooms, they have a separate men's room and a separate women's room for them to retreat to.
Yeah. Yeah. So we need shared spaces.
Yep.
Absolutely. Horrible.
All right, one more for this
All right.
region.
All right, we got one more to get through in this region. Statewide rent control. Dan's volunteered to talk about this because at one level or another, we've been fighting this one off, whether it was in Seattle or King County or statewide for years, and it's reared its ugly head yet again, and it looks like it's got some momentum that maybe it hasn't had in past years, probably partly because it passed in Tacoma, which is barely passed and looks to be unconstitutional, but that's never stopped our legislature before. The Constitution is just kind of this thing they just
Guidelines.
It's more,
It's more guidelines, really.
It's all in pencil, right?
Yeah, you would think if a jurisdiction like Tacoma or Bellingham, where this is passed at the local level, passed something, and then it's suddenly, it's challenged as being unconstitutional. It's in the court system. You think the legislature might take a timeout and not push something that's going to be decided by the courts. No. We need to push it right away. It's an emergency. We can't wait. I'd
be curious if they put an emergency clause in it, right?
Yeah. That's the other thing we didn't talk about. A lot of these bills that don't sound like an emergency, that make our the worst bills of session, there's an emergency clause on these. Why? Because that means you can't run a referendum, and a referendum needs a lot less signatures to repeal it.
Yep.
So you'll see a lot of these that don't sound like emergencies that suddenly are emergencies because somebody sitting to my left might run a referendum on them.
Well, capital gains was a great one. They slapped that one with an emergency clause and didn't even implement it for 3 years, 2 years? It's like, how's that emergency again?
Right.
Well, they had to let the popularity die down.
So if Seattle and Tacoma and Bellingham, want to put rent control in, which is going to limit the supply, and guess what? Drive up rents. Some people might say, go let them do it. But why are we going to put rent control in Wenatchee and Yakima, Omak? I mean, this is the law of the land for the entire state where people are renting apartments and homes. And we're now suddenly going to be telling them that they can't evict people who are doing, illegal drugs, illegal activity in an apartment. You can't evict them during the 6 months of winter. You can't evict them during the school year. I mean, this, what does this do? This puts other people, law-abiding citizens in neighboring apartments,
at risk.
At risk, yes. Yeah. And the same people that you think they're trying to help by making things affordable, it's going to put low-income people at risk with this illegal and risky behavior.
Well, and it was really clear, just this, like I mentioned this in 45th discussion, Moncadinga was there explaining, really a huge fan of this one and supporting it. And she's like, no, you can still, after they get out, you can raise it as much as you want. And she was trying to make it like it somehow was free market. But the only opposition in the whole meeting, right, was there were several landlords that said, look, if you do this, I'm going to have to quit renting my building out, so I'm going to probably sell it and leave. And here's the other thing. If this was like the first time, hey, you know what, Seattle, we got a brand new idea. What about rent control? And she's like, no, you can't say rent control. It's rent stabilization. That was her newspeak, right?
Yeah.
But like, if this is the first time ever anywhere in the world that this idea had been tried, we could go, well, maybe it could work. None of us know. No, everywhere that it's been implemented, rents have sort of increased out of control. The supply drops dramatically.
New York
And-
City. I mean, that's
What was it?
St. Paul.
famous-
Yeah,
yeah.
St.
St.
Paul.
Paul.
80%
Yeah.
drop in
Yeah.
commercial construction.
It's the
of
same thing
apartment
as
complexes.
communism. Everywhere they've tried it, it hasn't worked. Although I'm sure they haven't tried real rent control, just like
That's
they
right.
never tried
That's
real
right.
communism.
Well, it's rent. If they would have tried rent
We haven't shown-
stabilization,
Yes,
it might have
yeah.
worked.
We haven't shown the
Uh,
sponsor yet, but I think it's one of our friends, right? Who is the sponsor of this? You haven't put up our sponsor for this.
Oh.
There she is
Oh,
again.
No.
yes,
Yeah.
the font of good ideas.
Sandra
Oh,
Alvarado.
that's right. I
Yeah.
She's
forgot to
certainly
put- yes.
she's and this really means that she's got Rookie of the Year wrapped up, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
there's no one really in competition with her. She's the only 2-year.
When you come out of the city of Seattle, you're going to get Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just
Kind
is.
of,
Yeah, Well, you're playing
It's
the
like
big
coming
leagues
out of
already,
a
though,
top-notch prep school into college
is.
ball.
That's right.
Same thing. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
she's-
really ready for the big time.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move on to our
The
next
bracket's
bracket.
done.
Yeah, that bracket's done. Okay, so do we have a crime problem? Have we had a
No.
crime
None.
problem?
I haven't
No,
seen
it's
any
fine.
crime.
Just
Oh, yeah.
ignore the
Public
daily
safety,
multiple
not an issue in our
shootings.
state.
And,
Yeah, it's all fine. All right, so the number one seed here in the crime problem is homelessness is a civil right. Andy, you want to lead in on this one?
Oh, yeah.
You want to click us with a sponsor?
So you've got cities like Buren who are starting to pass some common sense law saying, hey, you can't camp on public property.
An
This-
area that the sponsor represents, by the way.
Yeah, it's probably why she sponsors it. But this is going to open them up to liability if they don't have the proper shelter or they don't cross a T or dot their I. It's just really stupid. It really is an attempt at a statewide level to prevent solving the homelessness crisis. It's the darndest thing.
She's obviously taken some heat on this because Burien has been successful at
Yeah.
combating us with some smart policy changes. And her response on the lawsuit thing has been kind of interesting. I saw that she was holding the town hall, and she made a point out of the fact that there's no civil penalty against these cities if there's a lawsuit. It's like there's no other cost with a lawsuit, like the fact you can't move them out, or like you have to pay your lawyers and court costs. I mean, yeah, okay, there's no penalty except for the fact that you can't clean up your streets and make them safe.
We should ask Buren how many people died when King County put that encampment next to City Hall while they were fighting this.
And yeah, you bring up one of the important things is that there's an economic issue, there's a blight issue, there's a crime issue, but there's also, and I think Jonathan Cho has done a great job of highlighting this, and also what's her name?
Andrea Suarez.
Suarez.
We Heart Seattle. Yeah.
They have just done a brilliant job of highlighting there's a human life,
Oh, yeah.
and especially fentanyl, right? I mean, when drugs have been plaguing us since we were little, and there's been waves of them, fentanyl and what it does to people just is so cheap and so readily available and so destructive. This is a death sentence for people to sort of callous, like, oh, you're pretending to care for them, but you're not. You're allowing them to die in terrible places.
Well, and one of the dirty little secrets on that is you've seen the death rate come down, which it's fantastic, by the way.
Narcan.
You're right.
But it's Narcan. So we're just putting people in this endless doom loop where they OD, they get revived, they OD, they get revived. And if you talk to any people like Andrea that are on the streets and they see this, that's what's going
It's
on.
a false security.
It's no way to live a life.
It's going back
No.
up in King County, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only Narcan so many people, and when Trank is introduced, Narcan doesn't work.
This is an example of a bill. You'll see this theme throughout that could fit in different categories. I mean, this could fit under trust us. We know what's good for you.
Yeah.
Because here we have cities like you're talking about, Burien and Auburn, and other places around the state who are passing common sense policies about illegal drug use and encampments and seeing success. And now the state wants to come in with one mandate for the whole state and say, hey, no. You guys are not doing a good job. The whole state is now going to live under the same regulations.
I sort of feel like this bill should get the unsportsmanlike conduct award. Right?
Yes.
Just the impact is really terrible.
Well, and there's been, like you mentioned, I mean, a whole bunch of South King County cities that have been impacted by the spillover
Federal
from King
Way.
County
Yes.
and from Seattle.
Tequila.
They're trying to make it better for their residents,
And they're
and
seeing
the state's
positive
going to
impacts.
preclude that.
Yes, yeah.
And they're going to be stuck with the bad policies of King County and
Yeah,
Seattle.
thanks to our
Thanks to-
Representative Gregerson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So who's our number one seed up against?
Oh,
Judicial release
Beautiful one,
discretion.
yeah.
This one.
This one
bugs
proposed
me.
by Tara Simmons, who does a fantastic job representing our criminal population in the state.
You know, before we jump into it, I mean, Tara is sort of an interesting character,
Yeah,
right? She got her life together. Her story is actually really compelling, and I find it interesting. Her as a person, it's compelling, and she brings a perspective that's normally not there. And so I actually genuinely feel respect for her for what she's done with her life. But at the same time, some of these proposed solutions, I just go, oh my goodness, right? She's trying to put.
She's not legislating
No,
based on her own personal experience.
She's saying we should play soccer. We should be able to use our feet in basketball. That's sort of what's coming into this, right? I mean,
Which is what she's saying in that picture, I think, too.
So for those of you who don't know what this one does, it allows judges to release convicts in prison to shorten their sentences so they're released. And it essentially does it without oversight. Right now there's parole board and there are procedures for that. This would give
Gets rid of all that?
Judge Bender, Judge Galvin the ability to go in and say, yeah, we know you murdered that kid, but you've done 8 years. Come on out.
and it's arbitrary too. It seems it's arbitrary. There doesn't seem to be any rules for it, and so it's essentially giving all the judges, a pardon power, and
That's scary.
yeah, it is. It is.
Well, and that's part of the reason why, mandatory sentencing guidelines were put in the first place, is you had these great inconsistencies going on between courts and judges. And so that was an attempt
Luck of the draw where
that the
you-
legislature
right.
said we need to standardize this. We can't have, same crime with different rates of incarceration. And now they're trying to undo all that.
This bill would obliterate that, wouldn't it?
I do want to give a shout out to Democrat Representative Warren Davis.
Yes.
Because she voted against this coming out of committee.
She asked
And
tough questions in committee.
In committee, she not only grilled the judges that were for it, but then she filed her own bill to kind of do the opposite.
Yeah.
Good.
We probably just heard her re-electoral campaign by mentioning something positive about it. All right,
met her
so
in
that's a
person.
good
She's
matchup
fine.
in 1 versus 4 in this one. The number 2 seed is the child sex predator sting. So, Andy, you want to lead off on this one?
Oh boy.
Take us to the next slide.
So this one, it sounds like a sick joke. If you're caught in a sting where a cop poses as an underage child that you are trying to have sex with, the result is a lighter sentence. You're off the sex offender registry sooner. They treat you with kid gloves. I mean, I grew up watching Chris Hansen, where he goes, have a seat.
Yeah.
And this one, it's like, here's the door. Have a good day. I'm like, what? What are we doing?
Yeah, so if the criminal's incompetent, even though he was trying really hard to do something really bad, we're going to let him off the hook. That's just crazy.
Yeah, just because they didn't hit the right target, right? They hit a.
Yeah.
That's.
And Joe, the ironic thing is, Senator Wellman, I mean, she chairs the Education Committee. I mean, she has been a champion, supposedly, of, in her mind, of K-12 education in our state. And why is she introducing a bill?
Yeah,
like
if you look at her
this?
resume, I mean, she worked at Apple. She was a VP of Worldwide Publishing, systems analyst and programmer. She's a public school teacher.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
protecting children.
you would expect
Yeah.
something there. And she's on all the right committees, but maybe it's Mercer. She's from Mercer Island, Bellevue, Newcastle, and those areas where she covers. And
Liberal guilt complex
Maybe.
is real.
there's something in the water there that's
This is probably one of those bills I just do not understand. Like, I
what
can't.
end? Yeah, why are you?
I can't play devil's
Who's your
advocate
constituency
here.
that you're doing this for?
Well, and then back to what we could have 128 entries in this. There's a lot of those that came out.
That's right. All right.
All right, and that one's up against lighter sentencing on gun crimes. Now, this kind of defies logic, and the graphic is so good on Roger Goodman, who's the chair of the Crime and Safety Committee in the House.
He's my representative, so I'm especially proud of the representation here.
Brian's not doing a very good job cleaning the weeds in his garden there in the 45th. So at the same time, the legislature is coming up with a bunch of new legislation to restrict legal gun ownership, like getting a permit to exercise your Second Amendment right, paying taxes on guns, ammo, all kinds of things, attacking the wrong end of the spectrum. Here's Roger Goodman saying, well, if you actually committed the crime with the gun, we have proof that you are a criminal with a gun, so we're going to lower your sentence. How does that make any sense?
I think, I was listening to him yesterday, and he was talking about there are these young criminals, the young kids, and they're not criminal by nature. They just hang around in bad neighborhoods and bad people, and so only way for they can feel safe is to have a gun in their hand, and they're getting caught up in things, right? And so we don't want to make their life miserable because they got caught up having a gun. That's sort of his premise, and I think he honestly believes that, right? I don't think. Right, I think there's sort of an honesty in his belief, but it's divorced from what's really going on, and certainly not in the best interest of these neighbors. And it ignores why are those neighborhoods why do they have poor policing efforts? Why are there not enough police in those neighborhoods to keep them safe? And that's clearly an effort by him and others that limited police involvement in those areas. I mean. And so, again, there's not only is it guns bad, gun crime okay, but there's also this police bad crime is, and therefore the resulting crime is we can't figure out where it came from. Why is this?
Yeah, and it's not just reduced sentences for gun crimes, because that would be too easy. We're also going to reduce it for gang crimes, drug crimes, and sexual assaults.
Oh, that's right.
So, I mean, it is just utter madness. I don't see how this makes any sense in Washington State. It's seen a huge increase in all of those types of crimes, and we're going to penalize the few people that we're actually able to catch, put through the legal system and put in jail, because we haven't done a very good job of that the last 5 years, and then we're going to reduce it on the back end.
Certainly feels like we've seen this movie a couple of times. This is like Fast and Furious number 17.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right.
One more region to go.
One more
Final
region. Round and third, heading for home. Okay.
Super duper.
Super duper important region.
Not just important, but super
duper important. I didn't name this one. It wouldn't have been my choice, but okay. I want that on the record.
It's kind of fun to say, though, right?
Yeah. I know. I want Demko to hear that.
When I was younger, my mom wouldn't let me say the F word.
All right. So, who wants to comment on cow farts that was proposed by Lisa Parsley in her first maiden run down at the legislature? She's newly elected.
Talk about making a name for yourself.
Yeah.
Your first session.
Step right in.
Yeah.
So this one will literally require, under the CCA, which failed to get repealed last year, it will require farmers
Don't make him go into his Tourette's thing.
and explain what CCA is.
The Climate Commitment Act, the carbon tax.
The hidden gas tax.
This is going to require farmers to measure the methane output of cows and times it by how many heads they have, how many cows they have at their farms, and it's going to tax them based on that amount.
We're not making this bill up.
No.
This is an actual bill.
This is an actual bill. They're going to tax cow farts.
Yeah.
And of course, dairy and meat, that tax is going to get passed down to the consumer again.
I've got an actual quote from her in the defending her bill. She said, monitoring methane, so she didn't use the F word, right? Monitoring methane from dairy farms is just the start. So there's more. There's other.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, there's more. We need to regulate emissions to save the planet. So they're monitoring cow farts. Ooh, then my mom's gonna be mad.
Oh,
yeah. But who knows what other effluents or other things they're gonna be monitoring. She's just getting started on this baby. Yeah. We're rolling now.
Well, and when I looked it up, she's either a vet or a vet tech.
She is a vet.
Yeah. So I mean, she knows this end of the cow, obviously.
Yeah. She's been around that end of the cow. Yeah.
So I mean. What's kind of funny is that they would actually let somebody in their first term run with such a ridiculous piece of proposed legislation, because it's just ripe for making fun of. How do you take her seriously after this?
You'd love to run against her in her first re-election, challenging on this bill.
Kind of makes you wonder about the confidence of leadership on the House side down there, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Almost sounds on purpose.
Yeah, and she is, and we might. You mentioned that she's actually only 2 months into this.
Yeah.
So she is literally the freshman, right?
Yeah.
She could give Alvarado?
Alvarado.
A little bit of a run. She's only got one shot at it. And Alvarado's got two.
Olympia is really jealous on the crazy scale. I mean, they see Seattle going off the cliff, and they're saying, "Hey, why can't we have that too?"
You know, what's wild about Seattle is Seattle elected what I would consider, for Democrats, a moderate council, and it's almost like they're regretting it.
Yeah.
They want to go back.
Buyer's remorse.
They want to go
the
back
good
to the
old days.
pain.
Things are straightening out. We want to go back to chaos. Yeah.
For all you NCAA basketball fans, since this is the March Madness bracket, Dick Vitale, the famous announcer for years, would call her a diaper dandy.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Diaper dandy. Yes, that's exactly right. All right. So she's the number one seed there. And that one's going up against funding local journalism, proposed by Andy's personal favorite in the Senate.
He looks great in shorts,
Mark
though,
Elias.
right?
Yeah, he really does.
That's what you want to see is Mark Elias in shorts.
Yeah.
So this one is, not only is the government going to hand $20 million to local journalists, but they're going to also require them to submit reports. And I think that is what really makes this egregious to me. They want to give a $1 million grant to the Linwood Times. Shout out to Mario. But if they want to give grants, I can understand that. But to have them report back on making sure what they reported, was group speak.
And I'm sure those grants will be open for anybody that's reporting.
And if you want an example how bad this bill is, Marco was actually at his LD21 town hall yesterday and did not take any questions from the audience. Instead, fed him through somebody who would receive one of these grants, who curated the questions that were asked. And you could probably guess the questions that were asked. Oh no, climate change. Oh no, Trump. And, nothing about Linwood becoming Linwood again.
Yeah, I love our graphic here. If we zoom in on that, if there's any chance. Elias is a great guy, says a newspaper funded by bill by Mark Elias, right?
That's how you get good press.
I think that's
the
exactly
best way.
I mean,
spend taxpayer dollars on
it does have a certain dear leader feel to it, doesn't it?
Give him credit for being smart on how to drift.
To me, the way this one is structured, it's one step removed from the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah.
That's
maybe it should say
that's next year's.
Should say Pravda on it or something.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. All right.
There's another really important bill, right, that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
We have a multi-billion dollar shortfall, public
and this
safety
is what
problems.
we're spending time on.
And
and it's a drop in the bucket in the overall budget, but it's like $5,000 to propose a bill by the time you tie up staff time and get it through the process. So, putting through thousands of bills, most of which are just silly, like cow farts and local journalism. What a waste of taxpayer time and money.
This one's a little bit of an insider politics bill. So I'm not sure if it'll get the support that it richly deserves out there for how ridiculous it is. But certainly, I think it deserves to be in the bracket of the top 16.
Well, boy, you should have seen the blowback on social media.
From this next one?
On this one? Yeah. So the number 2 seed, and I really think this should be the number 1 seed, because cow farts are one thing, but when you start messing with the state flag, that really is, like Andy said, got a lot of support on social media for the dumbest idea and biggest waste of time ever coming out of Olympia. So, Andy, you were following this pretty closely at the time when it came out. Maybe
another Snohomish County guy, right?
Oh my God! Yeah, they want
another LD21 guy.
The Cascadia, or I don't even remember what the flag was. It's just, guys, leave our flag alone. Yes, I understand it's hard for kids to draw, but it's George Washington.
Well, what was
Washington
the proposal?
State.
What was the idea? I mean, what was the...
Oh, God. It's like the symbol formerly known as Prince. It was just this weird, weird symbol. It was like this weird symbol. Just leave our flag alone.
Well, this is sort of interesting because it's, again, Strom is from the 21st.
Yep.
That gives us 2 bills from the 21st.
Yep.
And the only one that challenges them is the 46th.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't got to that final bill yet, but we've got one. So in some ways we have like dominant teams that could take this, where they've got a better shot. Like there's several parts. It's not just who is the individual player, but which teams.
Yeah,
the
which one's
46th and the
really
21st.
forming a cohesive team
Yeah.
and functioning
Are you
as
lucky enough
a
to live in one of these districts?
Yeah,
right?
it's like
These-
L.A. and Boston
these
kind of is what
brilliant
I think we've got building up.
legislators.
I don't
Yeah.
even know if Ortiz is on this list, but
no,
you
she
should have.
didn't make it, but she did have probably one of the
You
quotes of
should
the
have
session.
heard the stuff coming out of her mouth during the parental rights debate.
I'm sick of hearing from parents.
Yeah, I'm sick about.
Oh, there was
about the
another
right to
one
be involved.
because I watched it till 02:17 in the morning, and she said, "I'm up here representing the parents that did not sign the initiative." Wow, I'm sure they want parent rights too.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
Final bill.
change the
Oh
flag.
boy,
Yeah.
All right. Here's the last one entry into the competition.
is this the one that lets the Green River Killer run for
The
office?
inmate civic engagement. Yes.
That's the subheading of the official bill title, I think.
Oh my
Green
God.
River Killer for
Gary
judge.
Ridgway.
Right?
Is that why he was actually in King County?
He's running for sheriff against Reichert.
I was trying to get into the King County exec race since Dow announced his retirement, I think. But
God, he might have a chance.
What's up with the 46th? I mean, that's where I grew up. I grew up in the 46th, actually with Republican legislators where I grew up, and now it's equal opportunity, right? Every legislator in the 46 makes our
Both House
not
members
so
and the
sweet
Senate,
16.
yeah.
Yeah, so they're spreading the wealth really well there.
yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
I used to live here, and I mean, it's a pretty well-to-do area.
And again, this really embodies the super duper important things. Like of all the things we've got to work through, crime, a budget shortfall, lots of other issues with education, all kinds of stuff. We've decided that we really need to engage the prison population in the civic experiment.
Oh, definitely.
There's one thing when you talk about when someone is released from prison,
Yeah,
right? And you're
sure.
trying to get them back assimilated in society and getting a job. No. This is for people who are currently still locked up.
So, and the things it does is it lets them run for office from jail.
Yep.
It lets them serve on jury duty from jail.
That was pretty funny.
Really?
I'm
There's
sure.
one other thing.
Well,
there's
nobody
a vote.
would
can
have better
vote.
perspective on the process.
Yeah.
And it also puts
Believe
in
me, I've been through this before.
it also puts in guardrails that if their civic rights are violated, there are penalties. There's an
Well,
enforcement aspect.
the 46, we haven't talked about where that is. I mean, this is north and northeast Seattle.
Yeah.
And Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, that's the area. So if you want to know where this is the LA Lakers really of the 80s kind of.
This
right?
is Bothell Way. This is all
Showtime
Bothell
Lakers.
Way.
This is
right here.
Showtime Lakers is this Dan's former area in the
Yeah.
northeast Seattle, right in the
Wedgwood.
46.
Yeah.
And the 21st has got to be Boston, right? That's the back in the day.
All right, so we made it through the bracket.
Yes, we did.
Let's take a look.
All right, so here's the entire bracket. So you can vote at Future42.org on X or Instagram. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we'll be going through this, and we'll get down to the final four and then crown ourselves a champion. So
So you can start voting on March 17th.
you can
It's the
start
first
voting
day.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll have the first release tomorrow for people to vote. We'll be putting out some social media clips from this scintillating discussion that we've just had, and making it available online as well. So a lot of fun for us to walk through it, and hopefully folks got a chance to learn a little bit more about what's going on down in Olympia. Brian, you want to add any wisdom to this? We'll kind of go around the group here.
I don't know if I'm adding any wisdom, but I got to say this was a lot of fun, right? We're doing something sort of new, and really our purpose again is to make the transparent, the non-transparent, the murky, dark goings on in Olympia a little bit more accessible to people, and highlighting some of the usually things done at 2 a.m, right? And so I hope people enjoy this. Our intent was to have a little bit of fun with it, but also be educational. So you get both the you get your vegetables and you get a little bit of cake as well, right? We get a dessert. So
I think that's actually a direct line from the Ruthless podcast.
I ripped it off
who
completely,
we
yeah.
stole this from shamelessly.
we stole the process, but if they would pick us up, then
Yeah,
that would be
yeah,
something we'd be totally happy with, right?
I would totally go on their podcast. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum it up. You know, people are busy. They're, working more than ever, running their kids, between daycare and soccer practice. And, people don't have time to pay attention to what's happening to Olympia. It's a 105-day session. January through April 27th is the day they're going to adjourn. A lot of the media doesn't cover a lot of this. That's why Future 42 Steelhead Alliance. That's why we do what we do, is to try to highlight, what's going on in Olympia and to get people engaged on these issues. And as Brian said, let's make it fun. I mean, there's a lot of bad bills in Olympia. We haven't even talked about a lot of the taxes that are going to be coming later in session. But let's get people engaged on these issues, and hopefully we can kill some of these bad bills and get people engaged and having fun. But there's a serious component to it as well.
My advice for everybody watching this, if you're watching this, you're probably already following Future 42 socials, but I try to make it really easier for people to testify on bills, to comment on bills. The one-click link, make it 30 seconds. I mean, you've got the really bad ones. Like, I don't want to weigh anything, but you got like the initiative killer up against change the flag. Like, people just don't know about this stuff, and this just makes it super easy for people to go, oh, I don't like that, oppose, send. So,
And I'm going to do a final pitch for haywire.org.
Oh, absolutely. I was waiting for it.
We've got a new website in the state called haywire.org. And the whole idea is it's sort of like a drudge report of sorts for Washington State. It's only focused on Washington State. It really doesn't look at the national, except to the extent that the national imposes or intrudes on the state. And it's a collection of news sources from all over the state, and we collect some of the most interesting stories. On the left, you'll find political stuff. In the middle, you'll find interesting statewide things. And on the right is looking at the crime that is ravaging the state. And so I hope people go vote first. Go to future42.org on X or on Insta and vote. And then after that, because you're going to have to catch up on the rest of what's going on, go to haywire.org and tell your friends.
Yep.
Yeah, and Haywire is a great across the political spectrum site. So it's not just kind of the independent journalists that are, fighting the good fight along with us on a lot of this stuff, but it also, highlights legacy media and other sources of news in scare quotes. But there's a little something for everybody there. So. But yeah, we're just trying to have some fun with this, highlight it so people know what's going on. I think Washington State residents are a lot like the proverbial frog boiling in water, that they don't even realize why it's getting so hot until it's too late. So hopefully we can get you to jump out of the pot of boiling water before it's too late. So
that needs to be our exit cue, is jump around, jump around. All right.
Because there's still a month left of session.
Yeah, there's still a month left of session, so plenty of time for this to get better or worse. But there's probably some more tax stuff coming down the pike, because they can still propose that even moving forward. The rest of the stuff, some of these are not live bills, by the way, anymore. Some of these have already been decided, but that doesn't mean they won't come back in the same form next year. So
if I were a betting man, I would bet the initiative killer comes back as a zombie bill.
Yeah, probably.
Could be.
Probably. So, well, thanks for joining in. We had a great time, but this is what we do most days anyways, talk shop about crazy stuff in Olympia. So thanks a lot. Make sure to vote at future42.org on X and Instagram, and we'll look forward to crowning a winner. Take care.